Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to your Battle Hardened Los Angeles here. We are in the thick of things now, 5 rounds deep, and we're starting to see the cream start to rise to the top, so to speak. I'm Mitch Leslie here, joined by Sam O'Byrne. Hopefully you enjoyed our This Month in Flesh and Blood segment just now. Obviously, a lot of very serious news had to be covevered. I'm glad we got that out of the way. We can get back to the fun.
Definitely, because, you know, the news is so serious.
Yes.
Can't have any fun while doing the news. Can't make any jokes. You've got to really take the news.
Especially not at the Dromai community's expense.
Never at the Dromai community.
Challenge you to a show match.
No. The
I'll tell you it's a best of 3, and then they'll only play a best of 1 and leave. Yeah.
That was from the last one. That was from the last one.
That's my boy Noah right there. Yeah. Oh, good. Okay, we've got our next match pretty much on deck straight away. So without further ado, let us give you the intro. It's going to be Taotao Chu coming out of NorCal on Uzuri. His own very special take on Uzuri versus Eric Dauernnheim on Iyslander.
And this is going to be an interesting game indeed. Now, people have been kind of, you know, not expecting, honestly, Wizards in general, and yet here, this is like the Wizard stream we've had so far. We've had multiple Kanos, we've now had multiple Icelanders. Even in a meta that you're expecting to see Oldhim and Lexi dominate, these, clearly, these Wizards are coming to play, and many of them still playing live for the top 8. And in this case, we're going to have Iyslander playing up into a different style of, like, Frost Hex game plan than they probably had to do much of.
It's really interesting to see how the Iyslander deck, I mean, you are, of course, a big Iyslander aficionado, right? So you probably would have, you know, seen the advent of, you know, Codex of Frailty, for example, and started to feel probably worse and worse about your attack action cards in your deck, for example. Quite frustrating to deal with. How would you feel about sort of a matchup like this? Now, we're not going to talk about Taotao's specific take just yet, but in the Uzuri matchup, you know, how does this sort of play out for you?
Now, I think it's very interesting. I had some games against Sam Dando right after his incredible top 4 finish in the Chicago Brawl, where we ran some Iyslander games. I was on Iyslander, he was on Uzuri. I won't tell you how those games went because I want to protect his honor. He's a very good player.
Yeah, of course.
And I don't want to let the world know, you know, how those two games
went.
I wouldn't say that I won those games or anything like that. No. I certainly wouldn't. But I think it does really depend on the flavor of the Uzuri, right? And again, for this moment, as you talked about, Taotao is a pretty recognizable player in the scene if you're kind of tapped in. So it's probably relatively easy to guess what flavor of the month Taotao is on here versus like red line, aggressive Uzuri versus the contract fatigue, because I think the game plans are very different.
Absolutely. Taotao, if you recall, the last time we had a Battle Hardened in Los Angeles, he made his way to top 8 playing Katsu, the Wanderer, and was really impressive in his execution of a multitude of different lines. When Taotao picked up Arachne, many people will know this, he really straight away went to this very slow-paced, fatigue game style. He brings that approach to this Uzuri deck as well. And looking at the pitch card right now.
Yeah, I got literally, like, my brain broke a little bit.
Is that brutal assault? What are we...
Wounding blow, or... I think it's just a wounding blow.
Okay,
yellow wounding blow?
Show me the yellow wounding blow.
Is that what I think it is? But, I mean, now these cards are probably in there for their... Wow, and we start the turn off with the Orbido class. This is going to get an Uzuri activation, which is going to come in with, I believe, a Plunder the Poor. And we're going to take some damage. 1 point of damage from the 36 going down to the 35. We're going to make our contract, as that was, I believe, cost 1 or less. And so we, Taotao, if you're starting the turn off here with the silver, you got a point of damage through. You'd probably be a little happy if you're a Taotao starting the game off.
Well, again, we might have our contract deck. We might be generating silver tokens, but we don't have Black Tech Whisperers in this build for Taotao, or at least in this matchup, right? You fancy bringing the AB3 here just as well. Won't protect you from a red-fused Ether Ice Vein, though.
No, certainly not. Now, no Insidious Chills on the board, so there's not going to be any further discard. So it looks like we're going to do some AB. He's going to take some damage here. It looks like if that's a red, he's going to take 4, which is going to then require a further discard.
I mean, I'm almost certain that Taotao will look to mitigate as much of this damage as possible, or is reasonable, right? So
we'll see. He's going to now... Okay, it looks like this is him ABing for 3 most likely. Taking 2, yep, and then now the...
No, the discard unless you pay 2 effect.
Precisely. Deck. So again, now if you're Eric here, you sit down across from Taotao, you have to imagine you most likely Eric is going to be aware of what kind of game plan he's going to want to be playing, which means he's bringing in the Ice Eternals, one of which we've already seen. He's bringing in the Frost Hexes because you do have to play for the Frost Hex. Yeah, you know, that classic combo that you're taking down these combo decks or control decks of ye olden times. Now the new flavor here is Uzuri, so you're going to have to bring that matchup knowledge forward into this new meta.
And again, you know, I think it's interesting that I still obviously have a somewhat contract-oriented playstyle here in this matchup when you don't have your black text, because obviously Mask of Perdition, you know, being able to banish the top card, you know, of your opponent's deck if you hit with that attack action card. If we can keep, you know, cycling that back in, that is also going to be putting attacks in your opponent's card count, and obviously, you know, potentially filling up those contracts more to keep, you know, recurring that effect. So, Finals Fighting Spirit here. Eric on the attack action build of Iyslander. Some things haven't changed too much since some of her key cards were banned. So this is a mask block, and there's a Nourishing Emptiness being put in front as well.
Yeah, now certain Iyslander players are cutting some attack actions into matchups that Codex of Frailty is played.
Sure.
You just don't want to have, if you extend into a place of not having an arsenal, most of the time there's a card in your hand you want to keep for your arsenal for your next turn, and Codex can really take
Disrupt that.
Yeah, just change that game plan in a way that you do not want, and you are not, you know, looking for, so to speak. So Eric going ahead and playing these attack actions here. Interestingly, Taotao, we're going to see if did Taotao kind of make that read on Eric and bring in the defense reactions, or did he expect to see a little more arcane damage and maybe leave those back home? I
think, you know, if you're really cutting a lot of those attack action cards, going up against AB3 with only sort of this arcane damage build, like, man, like, how are you forcing damage, really? It's through Ether Ice Vein of yellow and above, maybe. All of your other 3 arcane damage effects, like, are quite easily, you know, blocked with Arcane Barrier. Here's your Codex. Looks like there was a card in Arsenal for Eric as it was.
Yeah, and so that's so no effect of the discarding or the card back into the arsenal for Eric here, but we're just going to grab a Leave No Witnesses if we're Taotao. Discarding another Codex of Frailty. So, I mean, if you're Eric, you're probably happy to see that that is the card discarded, knowing that you don't only have to face down one more over the course of this game.
Codex of Frailty is relevant here because what made Iyslander so effective, especially with the use of those attack action cards, was that they all came in at breakpoints, right? They were very efficient. So this is 7, sometimes 8 damage thresholds. Taotao, you know, from Arsenal, he's sort of able to shut them down if Eric, you know, chose to Arsenal and an attack action card. We've got a 2-card block for the Iyslander is something that she's priced into doing most turn cycles in general. Looks like it's going to be hard to find all in that hand there. So pitch and get that CNC off and running.
This no defense reactions onto the chain. We can see an Amnesia and an Isolate and a Shred over there in Taotao's hand. We're threatening the arsenal, but the thing about these assassin decks, they do often block 4/3 on their cards, but this is just going to be a Tunic into the Oasis Respite, which is going to gain Uzuri a life here and prevent 4 of that damage, while 2 more comes through.
Not many generic attack actions in Outsiders have that sort of 3 block. Amnesia is one of the few that that does that. That might have been a consideration for Taotao and bringing it in here, because otherwise, it stops things from being named, right? Which is not broadly relevant in many matchups here, but it might get sent across anyway because it still represents 6 power, and the old switcheroo comes out here for Taotao. Eric has an opportunity to react. He passes that, and here we go. It's going to be the Amnesia.
Absolutely, and critically with that blue Shred being pitched, whatever Frostbite might represent, might be represented by Eric, that one pitch is going to mitigate that. Yes. So Eric electing not to throw the Arsenal here because it wouldn't do much in terms of the Frostbite, but perhaps he's going to try to throw any damage later after this. This is going to be 3 damage coming across from the Amnesia, and as you mentioned, we have to imagine that the loss of the naming, the loss of the nomenclature here for Eric and Iyslander are not going to be too critical.
So Eric, we talked about this at the start of the match, is playing for a long game, so he wants to obviously set up some architecture to assist him in that regard. It, however, will just be a red ether ice. Now, I say just. It's a very powerful card, of course, with that fuse effect. So still presenting 5 arcane. And you got the pitch in Oasis. That is the perfect response. And a Waning Moon will clatter across as well here. Taotao may have to maintain some card density here. Block 1, take 1, and that'll be that.
Yeah, and so Eric looking for some of those game pieces that he needs to establish for the late game. We're looking for the Frost Hexes, we're looking for the Insidious Chills.
None of that's happened yet, right?
But critically, because you don't have the Insidious Chills out yet, you don't have to be worried about ticking them down
Using
too
prematurely
much. Exactly.
Yeah,
so these red Aether Ice Veins, you're able to throw out with reckless abandon, so to speak.
Something that, like, Amulet of Ice was so good at doing was just letting you fuse when you wanted to, not when you sort of had to. So.
And so that Sync Blow in the Arsenal coming out in between the Uzuri activation, just in case this is something like a Command and Conquer. And it looks like they're going to wait and see if the Sync Below is resolved. And it does look like Eric's going to go ahead and sink a card to the bottom, draw a second, and let's see what the Uzuri reveal is. It's just a Nourishing Emptiness, which is just going to be a 6 power attack. That is not...
You're not going to have Dominate. Otherwise, you
or the Intellect effect.
which would Would be great for Taotao, but he only really needs 4 cards here. Woundable coming out from Eric here, and some more of those attack actions. Really that style popularized by Michael Hamilton.
Absolutely, and critically pitching one of those Isotunnels to the bottom. We had to block with one on the first turn, but this turn we're able to send one to the bottom, prepare for that Frost Hex combo that you have to imagine Eric is playing this game towards. Ooh, this is fun. Taotao, 32 life to Eric's 32, but pitching a Plague Hive to come in with the Obritic class. So this is going to represent one of the 3 diseases of the pits. Let's find out which one.
So obviously, inertia, probably the most effective of those. Looks like a frailty was given over there, which naturally will reduce the power of any attack action cards that come from Eric's arsenal. If he's opted to leave them there for now, which is not always common practice for Iyslander. Sometimes you like to deploy your blue cards from there.
Now here's a Plunder the Poor being represented after the Orbitoclast effect, so all the non-attacks are going to block for 1 less. This is looking for cards with 1 or less cost, I'm pretty sure, to be banished off the top. Mask of Perdition is online. This could represent just an easy 2-card block, both for 2 to block for the total of 4. The question is there like a cut to the chase? And there is not. Reaction window is passed. Eric passes priority as well. Taotao going to go ahead and draw up his 4 cards.
All right, Eric fires back here with an attack action from hand. It is an Enlightened Strike. Probably just the 7. Yeah.
Now, we haven't seen a lot of Icelandering from Eric, have we? A lot of cards, blue cards being played from Arsenal. It's been red attacks, it's been red Aether Ice Veins, it's been Sink Belows, and he's sitting on this Arsenal still for quite some time. It does not appear like, at least as of yet, he's had the ability to find those lines that allow him to be getting in critically, not just, you know, the disruption, but the Waning Moon is so much better when it's 3 versus 2, and he's not been able to kind of bring those turns together.
I think when he can avoid situations where Taotao has the card density to open with a bit of class is probably a pretty big deal. Doesn't want to sort of risk any of these on hits, so mask triggers, losing cards off the top, more silver, more disruptive effects here. So it's a backstab being deployed. Says defense reactions can't be played to this card's chain link.
And if that was a blue or an ice card or both in Eric's arsenal here, if he wants to deploy it, now is the time when an Frostbite would represent having to pitch a card to Uzuri, but instead he's just going to block for 3. Uzuri's going to come in. He says, all right, is this a shakedown? And it is.
Okay, and
this
again,
is the shakedown.
Crucially, I mean, if you had a defense reaction, here's fine, right? But you can't do it beforehand because backstab. So that can sometimes catch you out with Command and Conquer, for example, with 2 cards that say you can't play defense reactions. But we have the Fate Foreseen here quite comfortably dealing with this. Now, in the past, Iyslander lists really only had the 3 sinks. But we started to see them go up in this density of defense reactions.
Yeah, definitely. The Fate Foreseens here representing a respect for decks like Uzuri that you need a little more ability to play beyond just the defense window, playing into the reaction step, because that shakedown here, you think he's naming red? I don't. I mean, who knows, but you think Taotao's better than me. But
if he sees like a Frost Hex.
Yeah, exactly. You have to imagine he's looking for blues to get rid of cards like the Frost Hexes and the Insidious Chills, these cards that represent the win condition.
Speaking of which,
survey says
we are deliberating whether the aforementioned Insidious Chill goes in pitch or not. Eric asking, at what point do I really need to start getting my fortifications erected? 31 apiece here, only 5 life lost by Eric. Unable to force Taotao's ostensibly fatigued deck down by 9 life, mostly the Aether Ice Veins chipping in well. So here's an encase fused.
Interesting. So now if this is going to target the hero as well as the hero's equipment, if any arcane damage is dealt, but he is going to just AB3 it, so the effect is no longer online, but if this had happened, he wouldn't have been able to activate his Uzuri ability on his turn. It does look, you can see Eric kind of shaking his head there. It seems like perhaps he miscalculated or did something he didn't wish to do. There was a little head shake there that I caught from him, but with that AB3 on the Arcane Lantern and the boots and the gloves, none of that's going to come through, and the in-case damage isn't going to matter.
Yeah, we talked about this before, right? Playing these, playing without attack actions into a deck with AB3, it's really hard to force any damage at all, right? You just won't get there. So, great example of maybe why Iyslander in the first place brought these attack actions into her deck, because coming from a different axis against decks that want to bring this AB3 is really important here.
Little Runeblade impression. This is going to be an Annihilate the Armed from Taotao here. This is, I believe, coming in for 5, and it's looking to banish attack action. So we do have a defense reaction, and we do have an attack action in Eric's hand, as well as whatever he set up in his arsenal. Now, he also, I think, if I'm not mistaken, pitched that Insidious Chill once again to the bottom of the deck. So, you know, he is setting up for the long game. You have to imagine he's not under too much pressure from this Uzuri deck, because he's going to be presenting some threats of his own. But this Mask of Perdition is going to go ahead and still connect, and let's get rid of 2 cards after he Fate Foreseened away, perhaps an attack action card, so it does not get banished to the triggers. Taken 1. We're seeing a Cold Snap, and we're seeing the Wounded Bull, so that is going to be the second silver.
Money in the bank.
So that Mask of Perdition, the shop is open now. It is able to be purchased once more, and so that 1 block and critically that extra banish is going to be relevant.
It's not easy to push Iyslander to that fatigue scenario in many cases. Winner's Bite here of the blue variety being deployed. One of the cards we sort of see Iyslander try to leverage a bit more to strip their opponent's hand now in lieu of some of her more powerful tools of yesteryear.
And interestingly, Taotao there deciding to discard the card rather than pitch it, electing to keep maybe not wanting ironically not wanting too much red density in expectation of that Frost Hex combo when he wants all the blues and less of the reds. So this Bindall's Fighting Spirit though is going to come in for a good chunk of damage and I believe connect for 4.
Yeah, I mean, just the shred put in front of that by Taotao, so he's really hoping to make use of this 2-card hand plus Arsenal. Maybe a switch from Uzuri here. Okay, Death Touch deployed, but another card, there's a real reason why Taotao opted not to block with another card. Perhaps he wanted to tuck that one away for another Arsenal here. Regardless, Death Touch still represents a pertinent threat here, generating one of those afflictions on hit.
You have to imagine the last thing Eric wants on his side of the board is that inertia token, so this is probably going to represent a block, and also he's able to keep 2 resources up to mitigate any potential arcane damage. So this is about as safe and effective as a turn as perhaps you'd want off of less cards.
So blue Ether Ice Vein put in front, and a sink there. It's going to cover over that Death Touch adequately. Unless no, that card will go into Arsenal for Taotao.
We're moving through some of these defense reactions. If we're the Iyslander player here, we've played 2 sinks, maybe 2 fates as well. Yeah, so we're only got a couple left in the deck most likely. This Bindall's Fighting Spirit though, just going to get easily cleaned up for a block for 7 by Taotao, and we're shipping it back.
Yeah, playing this contract build for Taotao means that it's almost like a Valiant Dynamo-esque, attribute there. We're having this recurring 1 block that's pretty easy to get back online here. And again, Taotao says, if I'm trying to fatigue you or get something close to that, getting 2 cards here for this CNC is totally fine for me.
And once again, we have an attack action in the arsenal. Eric not really able to do any true disruption beyond the Aether Ice Veins. That arsenal has been used for defense reactions and for big red attacks mostly. So
still no Frost Hexes.
No Frost Hexes, and almost, I don't know if we've even seen a Frostbite come out, man.
It looks like that Eric really wants to get through the first cycle before he starts to think about using them. We've not really laid eyes on too many of them even in his hand here. So
this is a Leave No Witnesses coming out from Taotao. He's got a card in arsenal, a card in hand. The only real buff we're worried about is a Razor Reflex or like a Cut to the Chase, given that this card has Contract but not Stealth. So interesting to see how Eric wants to move through this. If that is something like an instant speed effect in his arsenal, you have to imagine he's going to want to deploy it either in response to the trigger or that, before. I don't know if you can actually do it in response to the trigger, but you probably don't want to let your arsenal just get destroyed.
How long have we been on a Tunic counter for Eric here?
Quite some time. Quite some time. It's been sitting there for a while.
And also, there's the question of how many of those attack reactions Taotao runs. The Shred, obviously, we've seen him block with before. Ways to force these on hits that strip cards or potentially give you extra banish potential from the Mask of Perdition connection.
Absolutely.
All right. But he has to know, Taotao, that he saw an Insidious Tool go to the bottom, so that is going to be an issue for him. That's definitely something that Uzuri is going to have to contend with in the later phases of the game here. Remembrance pitched. Oasis Respite. And that's going to be covered up again, much to the frustration of Eric, who knows that this is his main mechanism for forcing damage and disruption right now.
Absolutely, and as we've also seen, 3 Remembrances head to the bottom of the deck for Taotao, so he is preparing himself to continue to put perhaps blues back into his deck. He has certainly the inclination to be fatiguing this Iyslander here, and, it's a different axis than we've seen some fatigue decks really play in Flesh and Blood, where they're also fatiguing through their effects of their cards.
Right.
They're not just blocking, and they're not just, quote-unquote fatiguing through damage. What the deck is trying to do is force the on-hits across that are going to make it so the cards are banished from the top of the deck, leading me to wonder how many cards did Eric play in the matchup? You know, how many did he bloat his deck?
Yeah,
with
did he want to like have a higher red count, for example?
just a higher card count to make sure that he's able to continue the aggression through all of this fatigue and not worry about losing a couple cards. But then, what does that do to your ratios? All those questions.
This is a blank shakedown right now. It requires you to have played an attack reaction this turn to get that extra banish effect here. So, unless Taotao's sitting on one, I mean, this Frostbite would make it a little bit harder, but seeing him pitch 2 to AB says, no, it's just a 6. Give me 2 cards, and we'll go on with our lives.
Yeah. So Eric now with 2 cards, the probably floor of this turn, and there goes another Insidious to the bottom. So he knows what some of the most important cards are for him in this match.
I like it.
This is most likely going to just be draw a card from this Enlightened Strike, see what he's able to get in that arsenal. It looks like an Ice Bolt, and he does have the Tunic counter up, so that's a 1-card 6 damage swing if he wishes for it on his next turn. And this E-Strike just going to be blocked for 6.
Yeah, more of those red cards being, you know,
absolutely,
wheeled out
yeah,
in front.
100%. That's, I think, yeah, it's an interesting part of what we're seeing Taotao do, get those red cards out of his deck.
Again, getting a look at the hand here. Another Plunder the Poor from Taotao.
Again, looking for those costs 1 or less, and, you know, the Iyslander deck definitely has a good, healthy mix of resource requirements within the deck, but there are plenty of 0 and 1 cost cards that are going to be able to be hit by this Plunder the Poor, and the Mask of Perdition is once again online. So for the first time, we're going to see a Frostbite potentially be relevant here, as this Ice Bolt is going to say if you have an attack reaction or something you want to do, you're going to have to pay for it. It looks like he's going to go ahead and AB 2.
Okay.
Only take the 1.
So we have that Frostbite in play now. Also, the Tunic counter, like you said, comes in with the Waning Moon, presents 6 damage, and Taotao takes it. Again, nothing floating here, just the Arsenal card, I think. Having to block those attack actions coming in on the ground was an E-Strike last turn, so Taotao can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and Eric's saying here, if I'm willing to give you a card for this banish, I'm going to keep all 3 of the remaining cards into my hand. I'm not willing to block a card, be left with only 1 just to mitigate some damage here. If I'm going to lose the effect, if I'm going to lose the card to the effect of your card, I'm just going to go ahead and take all of it anyway.
I'd love to know a deck count here for Eric. You see that stack of cards looking a touch dilapidated. Look at the size of this this graveyard here.
Yeah, that's crazy. I hadn't realized how big that graveyard is already looking.
He's offering 2 card blocks every turn, which, like we said, is something Iyslander is happy to do based on sort of how her resource curve works. However, there are cards you don't get back. So another E-Strike here. That's for the big old 7, most likely. All right, we'll cover that up nicely. Sink below here from Taotao and a 3 block. Eric says, no worries, I'll pocket this and we'll go to the next cycle.
And there's our answer for Taotao, definitely bringing in those D-reacts, respecting the attack actions here of the Iyslander deck. This is going to be a nourishing...
It's another 2 for 6, just let him have it.
Even the players having a little laugh
like, no,
with us.
there's lots of these multiple nourishing emptinesses in my list. Do you know why, chat? It friggin' blocks for 3.
Yep.
It blocks for 3. And we discussed many of the generic attack actions printed, especially recently, 2 blocks, as you would have experienced if you played any Outsiders Limited. So Taotao wants none of that smoke. Have this card. Looks great on a playmat.
It does. That playmat is sick. Let's see how Eric wants to go ahead.
Is he going to keep giving 2 cards a cycle here?
He's got a lot of life to play with, you know. So at a certain point, this is no true on-hit effect. You're not really. There's no threat of like a cheeky little pummel. At what point are you able or willing to start giving some of your life to start enacting some of your own game plan? You got him down to 21. This is you know, Frost Hex killable range, but you gotta have some Frost Hexes first.
And you don't need a full hand to deploy a Frost Hex. Keep 2 cards.
It's true.
You know, you can keep 1 card pitch and deploy it from Arsenal if possible. So it is interesting that I understand why we're pitching the Insidiouses away. They're a little inflexible as far as your game plans, especially if you want to fuse either Ice Veins to cause disruption in the early to mid game. You don't want to like trigger that. You don't necessarily feel good about an extra discard unless you pay 2 effect at that point. You want to strip the AB cards from your opponent's hand when it really matters.
Yeah, and now so this Frost or Ice Bolt was deployed from Eric, immediately eaten up by the AB from Taotao. Just slurped on up.
Yep.
So there's 1.
Like you and your rune chance?
Nope. I didn't say that. I didn't say that. But there is 1 arcane, or sorry, 1 resource left over. And he's just going to, like we're talking about, this is time to start letting your life total be a bit of a resource. We're taking the 6. We have 3 cards left in our hand, putting a, no block, but
it's like a fuse card. Maybe we could fuse something here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the chill deployed, and then we get to pocket something. Looked like an emeritus scolding.
Yeah, which is interesting. I remember from my days on the Stormbind back in my day.
Gee, way back then.
Way back then, those emeritus scoldings were really mostly saved for kill turns. You really wanted to use them when it was time to end the game. And here, you now have to say, I'm committing to spending 2 resources on this emeritus scolding, even if it might not get that much damage through.
And it doesn't really resemble part of the kill combo in this matchup for Eric either. We're much more likely to see like a Ice Eternal, Frost Hex combination there.
But again, we have to see some of those cards actually come out. And he has some life to work with, but he's now down to 21. If he just starts taking, some damage, it's every now, pretty soon we might be looking at a situation where it's like, uh-oh, I want to resolve this card, but I'm under 10.
Yeah, again, and Taotao knows that Eric's ability to like deploy a permanent and arsenal card requires him to keep 3 cards, right? That's why these breakpoints keep coming across. It's like, hey, you wanna do that? You wanna have this architecture? You're gonna give me silver. You're gonna give me damage. You're gonna give me some banishes here.
Taotao here holding a grip full of cards. So many things could happen with this back.
He basically put an EDH deck down at the start.
So we're banishing a card with Uzuri. We're gonna see what it is before the reaction window, and there's the Command and Conquer. So this is, if that has to be, and we know what it is. It is the
we got to get it out.
Scolding. So let's get it out. Now, we've got a lot of cards to eat up 3 of this AB, which looks like it's going to happen. So 1 damage is going to get through. And then looks like probably 3 damage is coming across because there's no way.
Yep, you ain't putting anything else in front of that one.
Unless there's, I'm not expecting no reinforce the line here. This is going to be 3 damage coming across. The question is, does he want to attempt to push any more damage with his Waning Moon?
I played that card once.
How'd it go?
Bad. I played against Stavo. I was trying to play Bolton.
Yep. Oh.
So, I was playing combo Bolton against Stavo. We needed it. We needed to get his dominate. Like, every turn was just ridiculous. It's the only time I've ever thought to use that card. Waning Moon here. Taotao says, righto, we'll give you some damage. That's fine. We'll take you down to 18.
Yeah, and so we've established 1 Insidious Chill. You have to imagine that on Eric's turn, he's going to go ahead and arsenal his final card, allowing Taotao to play off of 4. But that deck is starting to look thin, and again, we got to resolve some of these combo pieces.
Where my Hex is at? Oh, someone get the Coven in here. Let's go. Start chanting. I want to see effigies. I want to see it all.
Mitch Uber Leslie is looking for a Coven. Somebody let it be known. Okay, no, Raging Onslaught. Or is that Wounding Blow? I don't know. I think it's Raging Onslaught.
It's a 3-block that does. It's a 3-block that does 6.
This man, Taotao Chu,
yellow.
playing yellow.
Honestly, you guys are Giga Chat. It is a yellow Raging Onslaught, which is a 3-block that hits for 6. It is blank, except for some incredible flavor text. Let me hit you with this.
No, I don't want to hear any flavor text.
Bartran the Bloody hated anything that crossed his path, hunted everything that crossed his path, slaying ruthless bandits and savage beasts. They say his mighty great axe was forged from the ashes of his enemies and tempered with their blood.
Sick.
Thanks, Bartran.
Let's go. So now we kept a bunch of cards here. We took all 6 of that damage. We're keeping an Aether Ice Vein as well as... Oh, because the Insidious Chill is going to also... Yep. The Insidious Chill ticks down here, requiring a card to be discarded or a card to be pitched. We're going to discard that Yellow Shred, and now here's some damage coming across. But now, I'm curious why we kept 2 cards in our hand on this cycle. That's the question I have, because you're only going to be able to use 1 of them right here to deploy your Waning Moon.
Another Insidious. Yeah, I guess it kind of makes sense. Keep that 1 in rotation. Look, I think stripping cards off of Taotao on your own turn definitely has its merits, right? Especially if Eric wants to squeeze some damage in on the next cycle.
Which is what is about to happen, because look, Taotao has just, again, that Insidious Chill has done massive work taking every single card out of Taotao's hand. He's just going to tick up his Tunic and pass priority. So let's see what Eric can do with this opening.
I love the chat. Reese in the chat. Does he not play Frost Hex or something?
We don't know, Reese.
That's what I'm saying.
We don't know, Reese. We're trying to find out.
somebody get the detective, get the chat detectives out on this one. Don't worry about investigating IP2 penalties or anything like that. No. Find out. This man has Frost Hexes in the deck.
And now, fascinatingly, Eric just passed the turn back. So this is going to be a Polar Blast, which is going to potentially threaten to dominate. But first, we got a Plague Hive activation, because we've come back to the second cycle, and we're going to see what on earth comes as a result of Eric's card. Is it the Inertia? It is the
It's a
frailty again.
again.
So we can see that might be a card that might be relevant if that's an attack card in the arsenal here. But now we have to decide. He did pay the 1, and this is, oh, that's cool.
Okay, Command and Conquer with Dominate. That's nice.
It would have had Dominate.
Would he? You didn't.
No, he paid
He
for
paid.
it.
He paid for it. Of course, Taotao's going to pay for it.
So we're going to take 1 more damage off the Arcane. Now, it is interesting that, I guess because it was just that Command and Conquer in the arsenal, Eric was not really able to capitalize on taking all the cards out of Taotao's hand here.
We've seen a first cycle.
Oh, for sure.
No Frost Hex is to be seen. There are no Frost Hexes in Eric's deck.
Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah, you're totally right. We haven't seen a single one. Yeah, we're way through the cycles.
So that's not a thing.
So remember all that stuff we were talking about? We should not talk about it.
No, we spent a great deal of time talking about that. It turns out, not relevant. Okay, so Taotao here obviously going in towards the end of his term rather empty-handed here, saying, well, this is a tunic counter I can give here. And I guess that's probably more realistically Eric's game plan, is that I want to use my Insidious Chills and Disruption on my own turn, or at least force casting me, so I can squeeze through sort of guaranteed arcane damage. And in fairness, we're getting Taotao to what would ordinarily be the threshold for like the kill turn from Iyslander. We've seen already 2 Emeritus Scoldings, I think, deployed. That's a big part of like the max combo. Like this in case here, fused, there's an Insidious to trigger, and then, okay, I've got to AB to this because the effect is pretty annoying. Then Taotao goes back in his own turn with what, like 2 cards. Maybe he has to pass if he's concerned about what Eric might try and do here after arsenaling.
Yeah, so I think one of the things we've been really talking about, we talk about both the Frost Hexes and the Insidious Chills, but really it's those Insidious Chills that Eric is looking to close this game out. He's pitching them consistently to the bottom. We were like, why did he take all that damage? Oh, he just wanted to pitch another Frost Hex
block with that
Insidious Chill away. So at this point, Eric is now, he knows what the game plan is.
Yep.
He is trying to use the activation of the Insidious Chill to push through chip damage. This is going to be an Uzuri activation, though.
Do you react, question mark? That's a decline. Oh, surgical extraction, and now we see the sink.
So is the sink going to be sunk? It is. What are we sinking away for Eric here? We're taking a look at our Team Sneep sleeves, which are nice and clean.
Team Sneep. I'm sure there's a story behind that. All right, Heart here with upside. That's a life gain. And hit you with a frost, with an ice bolt. And again, Taotao finding himself only the Remembrance in hand, pitching that to this arcane damage. Probably 3 Remembrances for Mr. Chu.
Yeah, and we've saw they're all like right next to each other. There were 2 on one turn, and then there was 1 or 2 turns later. So they're all going to be right around, and he's keeping them in his deck for now, ABing as much as we can before here comes in the Waning Moon. We're going to check the deck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards left.
He might be in trouble.
And only one, and one of those is the Insidious Chill. So.
So his deck consists primarily now of Ice Eternal and Insidious Chill, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we're gonna see.
That would account for 5 of those. Let's see what he rips here. Hopefully not my heartstrings in twain.
I hope he doesn't rip your heartstrings in twain. But we are looking close to a fatigue game plan here. As here just comes another surgical extraction. If it hits, it's gonna take a card out of the hand. We're given.
It's okay, Mercy. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to put it out there now. It doesn't matter.
We're going to say now, without the Tunic counter online, we're not able to just use that for our Gauntlet here, which would be a very preferable thing. And there's that.
Well, we're blocking with Insidious Chill now.
Yeah.
That's the landscape.
Yeah, and it looks as though we've got 3 cards left in hand. Tunic's going to go to 3. 4 cards left.
And that is looking a little glum. Is Mr. Dauernnheim looking at the very limited number of cards available to him over the next couple of turn cycles. Whereas Taotao is, well, you can see. You can see that his deck is still quite healthy, forcing these 2 card blocks from Eric over and over again. So I guess this, in a sense, has to call into question the game plan, right? This chip damage disruption, I think it's fine. And Eric obviously still has Stormstriders available.
Yeah.
Obviously, Ice Eternal doesn't quite hit the same without things like Energy Potion to give you some of that extra, hitting power and cards to fuse it, plus the Frost Hexes to really, allow you to double or triple dip in some cases on that Frostbite damage.
What is he going to be able to just strip cards right here? Because this is the turn he has to do it. Because he's going to draw some cards. All 4 of those cards are going to go back into his hand. how else can he strip cards? It's just going to be this Command and Conquer. So we're going to be going ahead and drawing the rest of our cards. 10 is killable, but it's killable if they don't have the AB to prevent the damage that you're trying to throw. So at this point, it looks as though Taotao is just passing priority, perhaps, because he knows what the writing on the wall is. He's just trying to fatigue this man.
Yeah, High to Final is a worse titanium bauble at the moment.
And we are up to the very last turns of this game. Are we going to go ahead and attempt to do the Ice Eternal? This is the time.
Pitch. That looks like X equals 3, potentially. Or he's like, yeah, I'm in.
He's like, I don't even think
Does it? I am a nihilist presently. You have to fuse it, of course.
So first is the Insidious Chill trigger, which is going to require Taotao to do something, which is just going to be to pitch the 2. Now the Ice Eternal is going to go ahead and come in AB3 off of the 3, which is now going to make 3 Frostbites, so no arcane damage taken. 2 more arcane coming in. We're going to AB1 go to 9, be left with 2 cards left in our hand. And I don't think there's enough staying power of damage to do it.
Robust, yeah.
Because those are all the cards left. We're passing priority back.
Now, just if you would permit me to suggest a hypothetical to you. What if Taotao was presently afflicted by 3 Frost Hexes?
There's a lot more damage upon the stack.
Perhaps lethal.
A lot more damage, precisely. This is going to be the 1 arcane. It's going to be AB'd. I don't even think there's a spell in hand to...
Frosting, okay.
Yeah, I just don't think there's a spell in hand to even to Stormstriders.
Looks better on my cupcake than on the board right now, I'll be honest with you.
Woof. Woof.
Waning Moon eaten up by Taotao. And he is about to devour this Frost Witch.
Yeah, this is going to be the end of the game. There is not enough damage left in Eric's deck.
Binder?
Yeah, binder.
Yep.
Collection? No. Yeah, interestingly, no, Taotao free will to just attack the arsenal here on this axis of the Leave No Witnesses. It's going to allow him to... Now, this would draw a card. However, there is no card left to be drawn.
Waning Moon, you. It says, well, I don't mind if I do. I'm going to pitch here, and there it is. That the fist is extended, and Taotao has outlasted the icy winter, getting a victory here against Eric Dauernnheim, going to 5-1 with his Fatigue Uzuri Switchblade list, which has all the trimmings and the yellow raging onslaughts that you could ask for. Pretty interesting matchup. I think like Taotao's a really unique player. His take as well on deck building is quite different. Also, very, very hard player to get insight out of if you're on the Arachnid Discord and try to find out what your matchups are. But you're really strong showing from him. And again, you know, we don't often see an Iyslander get fatigued, right? Because so often she's able to establish a board state that makes the endgame relatively deterministic with her pitch stack. You know, and I'm not here to question the deck building decisions of Eric necessarily, as obviously he's really accomplished to make it 4-1. But we have to ask, like, you know, what happens to that endgame inevitability when you get rid of Frost Hexes? You know, you're pitching your Ice Eternals to the bottom and your Insidious Chills, which is great, but what else do you have to force this damage?
Yeah, definitely. And you have to imagine, you know, if you're bringing Iyslander to this tournament, you're expecting to be able to hopefully have game into the Rangers, right? And if that is part of how Eric was able to navigate that matchup in his prep and his lead before this, perhaps the lack of Frost Hexes allowed him to have a little more game into the Rangers. But then when you play into the Uzuris, when you play into the Oldheims, it might be, as we saw, tough to actually get those final points of damage.
I feel like your sideboard, definitely, the landscape for sideboarding with Iyslander is tricky now, right? Because you want to take attack actions out maybe at some point, and there's a lot of different angles that people can sort of come at you from here. So obviously shout out to Nara Bedler in the chat asking for an illusionist in the next round. None of them converted after round 1.
Wow.
Yep, unfortunate.
Just like that.
We'll,
holy moly.
Yeah, we'll see what we can make happen for you. We'd obviously love to see some more Dromai, of course, later on today. Now let's talk about our sponsors, the people who, without we wouldn't be able to make stuff like this happen. So obviously we're very thankful to both Collector Legion and Fabric. Obviously we've been down to Collector Legion, of course. That's where we have the AGE Open Series. Fantastic store down in Redondo Beach. Massive shout out to them for their support. And big love, of course, to Fabric, your go-to source for deck building here in Flesh and Blood. If you're an MTG player, you're probably aware of the sister site, EDHREC. Well, think of that, but better, because it's Flesh and Blood. That's right. You can head over there and find out exactly how some of the hottest performing decks are constructed. You can look at sort of what percentage of a certain hero is using certain cards. It's a great way to get further insights into how to put together the decks and find great success at your armories. So big shout out to them for getting on board with us. And of course, us! We're going to talk about us. Follow us on social media. That's right, live.age.events. If you're watching this live, you found us. Good job. That's where you can also find the VODs. We've got a wealth of fantastic matchups from AGE Opens of the past. So head over there, and that's the place where obviously all these VODs are going to go up. If you if you want to understand how that round 2 Kano match happened and try and help us piece that together, you can head over there. Twitter.age.events. That's where we are at. Of course, you want to keep updated on all the happenings. There you have it. That's where you can find us.
You're so good at that. I just want to listen to you talk about sponsors all day.
Working with Activision helps you like sell out pretty frequently. I'm going to break. We're going to break.